There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over a house late at night. It's not just the absence of sound. It's the weight of the day settling in. It's the sound of secrets breathing in the dark. For most of us, the person sleeping next to us is our anchor. A safe harbor. The one person in the world who has our back, no matter what. But what happens when that person isn't who you think they are? What happens when the person you promised "till death do us part" to becomes the one you're counting the days until they are gone? This is the story of Evelyn and Mark Thompson, a couple whose love story began like a fairy tale, but ended in a nightmare. Their life, from the outside, was a portrait of American success. A beautiful home in a quiet suburb, 2 bright children, a golden retriever on a perfectly manicured lawn. They were the couple everyone wanted to be. But a single text message, glowing in the dark, shattered that portrait into a million pieces. This isn't a story about a crime of passion. It's not about a sudden, violent snap. This is a story about something far more chilling. It's about a wife who, after catching her husband cheating, didn't leave. She didn't scream. She didn't pack a bag. She stayed. She smiled. She made him breakfast. And she plotted. This is the story of sleeping next to the enemy. It's a story about how love, when it's betrayed, can curdle into something else entirely. Something cold. Something patient. And something absolutely lethal. Because Evelyn Thompson decided that divorce was too easy. She wanted justice. And she was willing to serve it herself, one spoonful at a time. To understand the end, you have to go back to the beginning. And the beginning, for Mark and Evelyn, was storybook perfect. Their world was Maple Creek, Ohio. One of those idyllic Midwestern towns that feels like a movie set. Tree-lined streets, a historic downtown, Friday night football games where the whole town showed up. It was safe. It was predictable. It was the kind of place where people put down roots and raised families, and nobody ever locked their doors. And in the center of that perfect little world, were the Thompsons. Mark Thompson was Maple Creek royalty. He was the high school quarterback who'd never lost his charm. He had that easy smile, that confident swagger, that made men respect him and women, well, women noticed him. He'd followed his father into real estate development, and he was good at it. He was building the new, affluent subdivisions just outside the old town limits. He was the face of Maple Creek's future. And then there was Evelyn. Evelyn Reed. She wasn't like Mark. While he was the sun, she was the moon. She was quiet, whip-smart, with a dry wit that only came out when you really got to know her. They'd met at Ohio State. He was the life of the party, she was the one in the corner, reading a book. He told his friends the moment he saw her, "That's the woman I'm going to marry." And he was right. Their chemistry was magnetic. He pulled her out of her shell, and she grounded him. She was the planner, the organizer, the steady hand on the wheel. He was the dreamer, the salesman, the big personality. They just worked. Their wedding was the event of the year. The entire town came. And when they had their children, first Liam, then Chloe 2 years later, the picture was complete. They bought a beautiful, white 2-story colonial on Sycamore Lane. It was the kind of house you see in a Christmas card. Friends and family adored them. They were the complete package, one friend would later say. Mark was this big, charismatic guy, but Evie was his rock. She was the one who made it all run. They just seemed so in sync, said another. I always thought, if they can't make it, none of us can. At first, everyone envied their love. Evelyn was a devoted mother. After working for years as a research librarian, she'd chosen to stay home, managing the house, the kids' schedules, and Mark's demanding social calendar. She was the engine that kept the Thompson family train running. Mark, for his part, seemed to worship her. He was always praising her, calling her his saint, his better half. He'd bring her flowers for no reason, whisk her away on surprise weekend trips. But behind closed doors, tiny cracks were beginning to form. It started subtly. Mark's job got busier. The late nights at the office became more frequent. There were networking dinners that stretched into the early hours of the morning. Client meetings on weekends. When he was home, he was distant. He was on his phone. A lot. Always angled away from her. He'd take calls outside, pacing the patio. If she asked who it was, he'd wave it off. Just work, Evie. Don't worry about it. He started to get critical. Little barbs, couched as jokes. Why don't you do something with your hair, Evie? You used to dress up more. You seem tired all the time. Maybe you should. I don't know, hit the gym? Evelyn, ever the peacemaker, brushed it off. It was stress. The market was volatile. He was under pressure. She tried harder. She scheduled date nights. She bought new clothes. She tried to reignite the spark that seemed to be fading. Friends noticed something changing in Evelyn. The laughter wasn't the same anymore. The sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. She seemed fragile, one of her closest friends recalled. Like she was holding her breath, waiting for something to happen. When I asked if everything was okay with Mark, she'd just force a smile and say, "Oh, you know Mark. Always busy. Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. The cracks were about to split wide open. It happened on a Tuesday. A completely ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday in October. The kids were at school. Evelyn was in their bedroom, folding laundry. Mark was in the shower, getting ready for a big meeting. His phone, left on the nightstand, buzzed. Evelyn glanced at it. She never looked at his phone. She trusted him. But the name on the screen wasn't a name. It was just Jenna, work. And the message preview was not about work. It was a photo. A photo of Jenna, a woman Evelyn had never seen, wearing, well, not much. And under it, a line of text, "Can't wait for round 2 tonight." Last night was audio, a low, sharp, discordant sound, like a violin string snapping. The nostalgic music cuts out completely. The laundry basket slipped from Evelyn's hands. The phone felt like it was burning her skin. Her world, in that single, silent second, tilted on its axis. It wasn't just the text. It was the realization. She unlocked the phone. His password, ironically, was their anniversary. It wasn't just Jenna. It was months. Years. Texts, photos, hotel reservations. Late nights, business trips, it was all a lie. The entire foundation of her life, her marriage, her family, the man she'd loved since she was 20 years old, was a lie. She heard the shower cut off. The sound of the glass door sliding open. Mark walked out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist, humming. He saw her. He saw the phone in her hand. And he saw her face. The smile on his face vanished. "Evie, what are you doing?" No one could have guessed what would happen next. But soon, the perfect couple everyone admired would make national headlines for all theater wrong reasons. Because Evelyn Thompson was about to make a choice. This is the moment the story could have gone 100 different ways. Evelyn could have screamed. She could have thrown the phone. She could have packed her bags, taken the kids, and filed for divorce, taking Mark for every penny he was worth. And she did confront him. The quiet house on Sycamore Lane finally heard the screaming it had been holding in for years. First, Mark did what they all do. He lied. It's not what it looks like. She's just a colleague. She's crazy. You're hysterical, Evie. You're imagining things. But Evelyn, the quiet librarian, the methodical planner, had the receipts. She didn't just have the one text. She had them all. She read them aloud. Dates. Times. Hotel room numbers. His denial crumbled. The gaslighting turned to begging. He fell to his knees. The big, charming Mark Thompson was a sobbing mess on the beige master bedroom carpet. It meant nothing, Evie. I swear. It was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. Please, please don't leave me. Don't take the kids. I'll end it. I'll end it right now. I'll do anything. And Evelyn just watched him. The woman who had loved him, the woman who had built her entire life around him, felt something inside her just switch off. It was like a pilot light blowing out. The warmth was gone. And in its place was ice. She stood there, silent, for what felt like an eternity. Mark was rambling, promising the world, promising to go to counseling, to quit his job, whatever it took. And then, Evelyn spoke. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Okay, Mark. He stopped, mid-sob. Okay, what? Okay, she said, her voice flat. I'll stay. For the kids. We'll go to counseling. We will fix this. But you will end it. Today. And you will never speak to her, or anyone else, like that again. Or we are done. Do you understand? Mark scrambled to his feet, relief flooding his face. He tried to hug her. Yes. Yes, of course. Thank you, Evie. Oh God, thank you. You won't regret this. I'll make it up to you. I promise. He hugged her tight. Evelyn, her eyes wide open, staring at the wall over his shoulder, slowly, patted his back. Mark Thompson thought he had just saved his marriage. He thought he'd been given a second chance. He was wrong. Evelyn Reed Thompson agreed to stay. But the Evelyn he knew was gone. In her place was something new. Something cold, something patient, and something utterly remorseless. She wasn't staying to fix her marriage. She was staying to finish it. On her own terms. The next few weeks were a performance. Evelyn was the perfect, forgiving wife. She scheduled the counseling appointments. She started cooking Mark's favorite meals again. She smiled at him. They even started being intimate again. To Mark, it was a miracle. His saint, Evie, had forgiven him. He was a lucky man. He was sleeping soundly again. But he was sleeping next to the enemy. Evelyn was living a double life. By day, she was the doting wife and mother. But at night, after Mark was asleep, breathing heavily beside her, Evelyn was in the basement, on the family's old desktop computer. She didn't use Google. She was too smart for that. She used privacy-focused browsers. She routed her IP address. The librarian, the researcher, she knew how to find information. And she knew how to hide her tracks. Her search queries were chilling in their specificity. Poisons that mimic natural causes. Symptoms of heart attack versus poison. Tasteless, odorless, undetectable toxins. How to poison someone, slowly. She didn't want a sudden death. That would be messy. That would bring suspicion. No, She wanted something else. She wanted him to suffer. She wanted him to feel as helpless and as sick as he had made her feel. She researched for days. Ricin. Arsenic. But those were too dramatic. Too traceable. And then she found it. It was simple. It was mundane. And it was already in their garage. Ethylene glycol. Antifreeze. It was sweet. It was water-soluble. It could be mixed into coffee, into orange juice, into his evening cocktail. And the symptoms, they were perfect. At first, it would look like the flu. Nausea. Headaches. Dizziness. Then, as it metabolized, it would attack the kidneys. It would cause catastrophic, acute kidney failure. By the time doctors figured out what was happening, it would be too late. It would look like a tragic, aggressive, natural illness. Imagine him. The quiet librarian. Standing in the cold garage at 2 a.m., a heavy-duty plastic jug in her hand. She didn't take the jug. That would be too obvious. She siphoned a small amount into an old, empty water bottle, which she then hid in the back of the cleaning cabinet, beneath the sink. The plotting was over. The crime was about to begin. It started a week later. A Monday morning. Mark was running late. "Evie, have you seen my keys?" he yelled from the kitchen. "On the counter, honey," she called back, her voice bright. "I poured you a coffee to go." He ran in, kissed her on the cheek. "You're a lifesaver, Evie. I mean it. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Drink up," she said, smiling, handing him the insulated mug. "You don't want to be late." He took a long sip. "Tastes a little sweet. Did you put sugar in this?" "Just a little," she said. "For energy." He smiled, kissed her again, and ran out the door. Evelyn stood at the kitchen window and watched him drive away. Her hand wasn't even shaking. That night, Mark came home complaining of a stomach bug. "I feel awful," he groaned, collapsing on the sofa. "My head is spinning." Evelyn was instantly by his side. The doting wife. She brought him a cold cloth for his head. She brought him a blanket. "You probably just run down," she cooed. "Here. I made you a smoothie. It's got ginger and vitamins. It'll settle your stomach." He drank it gratefully. Of course, the smoothie had more than just ginger in it. This became the new routine. For 3 weeks, Evelyn Thompson slowly, methodically, poisoned her husband. She'd put a little in his morning orange juice. A splash in his post-work bourbon. And Mark just got sicker. He went to the doctor. They were baffled. "It looks like a severe flu," the doctor said. "But it's lingering. And your blood pressure is high. Let's run some tests." The tests came back inconclusive. But his kidney function looked stressed. "You need to rest, Mark," the doctor advised. "Take it easy. Lots of fluids." Evelyn was right there, nodding. "I'll take care of him, doctor. Don't you worry." And she did take care of him. She fluffed his pillows. She brought him his meals in bed. She held his hand when he shivered. She listened to him complain, his voice getting weaker every day. "I don't get it, Evie," he'd rasp, his skin pale and clammy. "I feel awful. Like my body is shutting down." "Shush," she'd say, brushing the hair off his damp forehead. "Just rest. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Friends and family were amazed at her devotion. "She's a saint," Mark's own mother said, crying on the phone. "She hasn't left his side. Mark was now too weak to get out of bed. He was confused. His body was racked with pain. He was dying. And the person he trusted most in the world was the one killing him. It was a Tuesday. Exactly 4 weeks after she'd found the text. Mark was in agony. He was vomiting uncontrollably. He was having trouble breathing. His body was convulsing. Evelyn, her face a mask of panic, fumbled for her phone. She dialed 911. Her voice, when the operator answered, was a masterpiece of terror. "Please, help. It's my husband. I think he's having a heart attack. He's not breathing right. Oh God, please hurry. Please." The call was chilling. She was crying. She was hysterical. She was giving the operator their address, begging them to save him. And in the background, you could hear Mark Thompson moaning, dying. The EMTs arrived in under 6 minutes. The quiet street of Sycamore Lane was suddenly alive with flashing red and blue lights. They rushed in, finding Evelyn kneeling beside the bed, desperately trying to perform CPR. They pushed her aside. They worked on Mark. They got a faint pulse. They loaded him onto the gurney, Evelyn clinging to his hand. "Please don't leave me, Mark. Please. I love you. I love you," she screamed as they wheeled him out to the ambulance. It started with a scream. Then silence. The kind of silence that tells you something terrible just happened. Mark Thompson was pronounced dead at 11:52 p.m. at Maple Creek General Hospital. The initial cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, complicated by sudden and catastrophic kidney failure. A tragedy. A shock. The whole town was devastated. By the time police arrived to take a routine report, Evelyn was in the hospital waiting room, collapsed in her mother-in-law's arms. A perfect, shattered, grieving widow. The love story was over. And the truth was only just beginning to unfold. In a small town like Maple Creek, a sudden death like Mark Thompson's, a healthy, 42-year-old man, is more than a tragedy. It's an anomaly. At first, the investigation was, well, it wasn't one. It was just procedure. Detectives spoke to a devastated Evelyn. She walked them through the last few weeks. Mark's flu. His dizziness. His weakness. The doctors couldn't figure it out, she wept, clutching a tissue. He was just fading. I did everything I could. She seemed utterly broken. The detectives were sympathetic. They closed their notebooks. This was a case for the medical examiner, not for them. And that is where the first moment happened. The ME, a seasoned professional named Dr. Aries, was conducting the autopsy. On the surface, it looked right. Heart failure. Kidney failure. But the speed of it. The totality of the organ collapse. It didn't sit right with him. It was too aggressive. Too chemical. He did what all good MEs do. He ordered a full, comprehensive toxicology screen. This wasn't going to be fast. It would take weeks. In those weeks, Evelyn Thompson played the part of the grieving widow to perfection. She organized a beautiful funeral. Half the town was there. She delivered a eulogy that left everyone in tears. She spoke of their college romance, of his big heart, of the family he loved. "He was my rock," she cried, her voice breaking. "And I don't know. I just don't know how I'm going to live without him." She was surrounded by family. Supported by friends. Casseroles and condolence cards flooded the house on Sycamore Lane. She was also busy. She had Mark cremated almost immediately after the autopsy was complete. She contacted Mark's lawyers, his life insurance company. She was, as her friends noted, surprisingly efficient for someone so grief-stricken. Then, 3 weeks after the funeral, the phone rang on Detective Miles's desk. It was Dr. Aries from the ME's office. "Miles," Dr. Aries said, his voice grim. "You need to get down here. And you need to open an investigation into Mark Thompson's death. Right now." "What?" "I thought it was natural causes." "It was anything but," Dr. Aries said. "His blood and kidney tissue were saturated. I mean, saturated with ethylene glycol." Detective Miles was silent for a beat. "Antifreeze." "This wasn't an accident, Miles," the doctor said. "This wasn't a one-time dose. The levels, the crystal formation in the kidneys, this was slow. This was methodical. Someone was feeding this to him, a little at a time, for weeks. This was homicide. And it was a nasty one." Audio. The ticking clock gets louder, more intense. Suddenly, the entire case was thrown into a new, harsh light. This wasn't a tragedy. This was a murder. Detective Miles and his partner went back to the house on Sycamore Lane. This was no longer a wellness check. It was a search. Evelyn was shocked. "Poison," she gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Who would do that?" Mark didn't have any enemies. Was it a business deal? A disgruntled employee? She was good. She was very good. She was already offering them other suspects. At first, detectives thought it might have been a break-in gone wrong, Detective Miles would later say. But something didn't add up. There was no forced entry. And now, this. A poison by proxy. This is personal. They started digging. Not at the house, but into Mark Thompson's life. And it didn't take long to find the cracks. They subpoenaed his phone records, his credit card statements. The late nights weren't at the office. They were at the Hilton downtown. The client dinners were at romantic bistros. And the charges were all linked to one name, Jenna Riley. Jenna Riley was a 28-year-old associate at a firm Mark's company worked with. When detectives showed up at her apartment, she fell apart. She spilled everything. The affair. It had been going on for almost 2 years. She was in love with him. He'd promised to leave his wife. He was just waiting for the right time, waiting for the kids to be older. But then, something changed, Jenna cried to the detectives. About a month, maybe 5 weeks ago. He got scared. He called me, panicking. He said, "She knows. Evelyn knows. I have to end this. Don't call me again." This was the pivot. The aha moment that spins an entire investigation. Evelyn hadn't just known. She'd known for weeks. The exact same time frame that the ME said the poisoning had begun. The motive wasn't a business deal. The motive was betrayal. The focus of the entire investigation snapped, like a spotlight, onto one person, the grieving widow. They went back to the house. This time, with a warrant for everything. The computers. The phones. The house itself. Evelyn was indignant. "How dare you? After everything I've been through? You're accusing me?" But the evidence was already talking. They found the family's old desktop in the basement. Evelyn had been smart. She'd used privacy browsers. She'd deleted her history. But she wasn't a forensic tech. The investigators pulled the hard drive. They ran a deep recovery. And there it was. A digital confession. Fragments of her searches, still buried in the drive's unallocated space. Ethylene glycol symptoms versus flu. How long for antifreeze to kill a man? 200 pounds by tasteless poison. How to clear browser history permanently. And then, the kicker. The smoking gun. In the garage, tucked away in the back of a high shelf, behind old paint cans, a full, unopened jug of antifreeze. But in the cleaning cabinet, under the kitchen sink, behind the Windex and the bleach, a half-empty water bottle. The liquid inside was clear. But when the lab tested it, it was 95 ethylene glycol. The mask was slipping. Detective Miles and his partner returned to the house. The kids were at Evelyn's mother's house. Evelyn was sitting at her kitchen table, drinking tea, surrounded by condolence cards. Mrs. Thompson, Miles said, his voice flat. He placed a plastic evidence bag on the table. It contained the water bottle. We found this. Evelyn looked at the bottle. She looked up at the detectives. And this is the moment where, in most stories, the killer breaks down. They confess. It all comes pouring out. But not Evelyn. When police finally confronted Evelyn with the search history and the bottle, Detective Miles recalled, the mask didn't slip. It hardened. The color drained from her face. The grieving widow was gone. And in her place, was the killer. She just stared at us, her eyes like chips of ice. And in that silence, we knew. We absolutely knew. She said only 5 words. I think I need a lawyer. The image of Evelyn Thompson being led from her perfect colonial home in handcuffs, it rocked Maple Creek to its core. The neighbors' blinds twitched. The woman they had all pitied, the saint they had all rallied around, was a cold-blooded killer. The news exploded. The antifreeze widow. Poison in the suburbs. Evelyn's perfect life was over. And her new one was just beginning. The trial of Evelyn Thompson was more than just a local sensation. It became a national obsession. Court TV, 2020's, Dateline, they all descended on the small Ohio town. This wasn't just a murder trial. It was a psychological drama. It was a story of love, betrayal, and ice-cold revenge. The courtroom was packed every single day. On one side, Mark's family, their faces a mask of stony grief and quiet rage. On the other, Evelyn's parents, looking bewildered, as if they couldn't understand how their quiet, bookworm daughter ended up here. Evelyn herself sat at the defense table, looking smaller, thinner. Her hair was pulled back. She wore modest blouses. She looked less like a calculating killer and more like a librarian. Which, of course, she was. The prosecution's case was methodical, brutal, and devastating. This, the prosecutor said in his opening statement, gesturing to Evelyn, is not a case of passion. This is not a mistake. This was a crime of patience. This was a month-long execution. This was a woman who smiled in her husband's face, who kissed him goodnight, all while she was meticulously, cruelly, and painfully killing him. They laid it all out. The aha moment, the affair. They called Jenna Riley to the stand. She was a wreck. She wept through her entire testimony, as she described her love for Mark, his promises, and then, the final, panicked call. She knows. How, the poison. The ME, Dr. Aries, took the stand. He explained, in grim, clinical detail, what ethylene glycol does to a human body. How it crystallizes in the kidneys. How it shuts down the central nervous system. How it's a slow, agonizing death. He called it torture. The raw proof, the digital trail. The forensic tech showed the jury the recovered search history. poisons that mimic natural causes. The courtroom gasped. And then, the prosecution's masterstroke. They played the 911 call. The courtroom listened in stunned silence. Evelyn's hysterical voice, begging for help. The sounds of Mark moaning in the background. This, the prosecutor said, his voice dripping with contempt, is the performance of her life. The sound of a woman, acting, as her victim takes his final breath. Evelyn sat motionless. She just stared. What could the defense possibly say? They had an impossible hand to play. They couldn't deny the poisoning. The evidence was too overwhelming. So, they didn't try to prove her innocence. They tried to explain her mind. Their strategy, to put Mark Thompson on trial. They painted him as a monster. A serial cheater. A narcissist. A man who gaslit his wife for years, who criticized her, who chipped away at her self-worth until there was nothing left. Mark Thompson didn't just break Evelyn's heart, the defense attorney argued. He broke her mind. He emotionally abused her, isolated her, and controlled her. They tried to argue for a psychological snap. Battered woman syndrome, but for emotional, not physical, abuse. She wasn't trying to kill him, the attorney claimed. She was trying to make him stop. Make him hurt. She was a broken woman, lashing out in the only way she knew how. It was a compelling narrative. But the prosecution was ready for it. A broken woman, the prosecutor scoffed. A broken woman packs a bag. A broken woman files for divorce. A broken woman does not, for 30 days, play the doting wife while spoon-feeding her husband poison. That's not a snap. That's a plan. Then, the defense made a high-stakes gamble. They put Evelyn on the stand. She was soft-spoken. She was articulate. She wept as she described discovering the affair. He killed me, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The man I loved, the father of my children, he just erased me. He told me I was crazy. He told me I was worthless. And when I found out, I broke. She was, for a moment, believable. Sympathetic. Until the cross-examination. The prosecutor approached her, his voice deceptively gentle. Mrs. Thompson, you testified you were afraid of him. That he was this monster. Yes, she whispered. But you weren't afraid to kiss him goodnight, were you? After you'd put poison in his cocktail? Evelyn hesitated. You weren't afraid to bring him his vitamin smoothie in bed, as he got weaker and weaker? He was hurting me. Mrs. Thompson, the prosecutor's voice boomed, you looked him in the eye, every single day, for 3 weeks, and you watched him die. Didn't you? Evelyn's composure, so carefully constructed, shattered. The mask was gone. Her face contorted, not in sadness, but in rage. He deserved it, she screamed, lunging forward in her seat. He deserved it. He killed me first. He took everything from me. He deserved to feel what I felt. The courtroom exploded. The judge banged his gavel. But it was over. She had confessed. Not just to the act, but to the malice. To the revenge. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood. Evelyn was shaking. On the count of murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. A strangled sob came from Mark's mother. Evelyn just slumped. As if the strings holding her up had been cut. At sentencing, the judge was scathing. He called her actions the very definition of malice, a profound betrayal, and a chilling act of calculated cruelty. Evelyn Thompson was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Justice, at last. But no one left that courtroom feeling victorious. Because in this story, everyone had already lost. The gavel falls. The cameras leave. The trial ends. But the story never does. The wreckage left behind by Evelyn's perfect revenge was total. First, there are the children. Liam and Chloe. In the span of 2 months, they lost their father to a brutal murder, and their mother to a prison sentence. They didn't just lose their parents, they lost their entire history. Their home. Their name. They are being raised by Evelyn's parents, two quiet, heartbroken people who now have to explain to their grandchildren why their mother did what she did. How do you ever recover from that? Then there's Mark's family. They got justice, but it feels hollow. They have to live with the dual, agonizing knowledge that their son, their brother, was not the man they thought he was, but that he also suffered one of the most horrific, intimate betrayals imaginable. And Jenna Riley. The other woman. Her life was ruined. She was the pariah of Maple Creek, the homewrecker who caused the murder. She lost her job. She moved to a different state, changed her name. She will forever be a footnote in a story of death and betrayal. Even the house on Sycamore Lane, the perfect, white colonial, it's a monument to the darkness. It sat empty for years. No one wanted to live in the murder house. It became a dark tourist spot, a silent reminder of the day love turned lethal. The community of Maple Creek was changed. The trust was gone. The doors that were once unlocked are now bolted shut. Every perfect couple now wondered what secrets their neighbor might be hiding. People who knew them still ask the same questions. How could Evelyn, quiet, smart Evelyn, do something so monstrous? And how could Mark have been so reckless, so cruel, to push her there? Evelyn Thompson, from her prison cell, has never shown remorse. She reads. She works in the prison library. She is, by all accounts, a model prisoner. She just exists. Cold. Quiet. This wasn't a story about a killer, not in the way we usually think. This was a story about a wife. A mother. A woman who was pushed past her limit, and instead of walking away, she chose to burn the entire world down. Love and hate aren't opposites. They are neighbors. They live in the same house. And sometimes, the line between them is nothing more than a thin wall of betrayal. When Evelyn Thompson discovered her husband's secret, she had a choice. She had so many choices. Divorce. Separation. Counseling. She could have left. She could have taken him for everything. She could have walked away and built a new life. But she didn't. She chose to stay. She chose to smile. She chose to pour the coffee, to fluff the pillows, and to kiss her husband goodnight, all while meticulously, patiently, and cruelly ending his life. She thought she was getting justice. She thought she was balancing the scales. But she just destroyed them. It makes you ask the question. That dark, unsettling question. If the person you loved most in the world, the person you built your life with, broke your heart beyond all repair, how far would you go for revenge? This was the story of Evelyn and Mark Thompson, a love that began with a promise and ended with a prison sentence. Because in the end, revenge never brings peace. It doesn't heal the wound. It just cauterizes it. It only leaves behind ruins, right where love once lived.